Hello everyone. So again we are here with the same topic. This is Charvak philosophy. I already have explained this topic in board in Hindi language, and this time this is in English language. So at first, before entering topic, we will see the reason behind the term Charvak, its origin, and the reason, what is the reason and what is the meaning of the term Charvak. So Charvak is basically the combination of two terms, that is the Charu and Vak, and Charu means happy or the pleasant, and Vak is the term Vak is derived from term Vad, and this is the grammatical item, that is Dhatu Roop in Sanskrit language, which means speech or speak. So pleasant to speak, pleasant to hear, that is a Charvak. This is the word mean of that term Charvak, and there are some more explanation about this particular term. So another is that this is the another dhatu, that is a charva, which means to chew. So this is derived from that charva dhatu, which is also a grammar of a Sanskrit language, which means chew. So always kind of the consumption or to eat every time. This is the word mean of Charvak, but the metaphorical explanation is that Charvak is the consumption and the destroying of the values and the consideration what was there at that time, especially transcendental entities like God and heaven, rebirth, pre-birth, the concept of rebirth, pre-birth, and liberation and health. So such kind of phenomena was rejected by Charvak. So this was the metaphorical explanation, and some more reason behind the term is that Charvak is a name of a Sikh who was the disciple of Guru. What was the name of the Guru, which was the Dev Guru, the Brihaspati. So, in his name, the Charvak philosophy is also known by Brihaspati Darshan. So, the third one is that the name of a Sikh, which was a disciple of Brihaspati. So, by his name, we know this philosophy as Charvak. And fourth one is that we know this philosophy as the Brihaspati Darshan. So reason behind is there is a story. So story is that there was a Devasur Sangram, and that a war, the Devguru Brihaspati has created this philosophy to create a kind of the illusion or the misunderstanding among the demons. So we know this philosophy by his name Brihaspati Darshan. And the fifth one is that we also know this philosophy as Lokayat philosophy. So it was highly accepted among the people, and easily this was the pleasant to hear, and spread it in that time, and the societies. That is why we also know this philosophy as a Lokayat Darshan. Now we see some keywords that we will use while our lecture. So first is that the material cause. So what is material cause? Material cause is that material which create any work. By example, we see that material cause. So we have the example of a pot. In this example, we can have a clay or the soil. So in a pot, the clay or the soil is a material cause. And a second one is the efficient cause. So efficient cause is the cause which gives to velocity to the and kind of the arrangement to the material cause and create an action. And we can have the same example here. So in the example of pot, the potter man is the efficient, and we can have another example of the table where the wood is material cost and carpenter is efficient cost. And we can have a third example, that is a jewelry. In jewelry we have the gold is material cost, and the goldsmith is efficient cost. So this was the two main point of the complete Indian philosophy. Will see this both on the efficient cost and material cost. So the specification of this cost is that material cost will always be there even after the action is completed. So and the efficient cost, the maker and the creator which will create the action, that will be removed if the action is completed. And maybe they cannot be there, the potterman cannot be at last, but the clay or the soil will always be there in the pot. So the material cause is deeply connected with the action. Now we will see another term, that is the sense. So we have a 5 external sense organ and one is the internal sense organ, and 5 external sense organ. So what is this sensory entity? The sense entity is that which we know by our sense organ, that are the sensory entity. And the empirical entity, empirical reality, anubhavik satta, the things which we know by the sense organ, that are the empirical reality, empirical entity. And the mind is also internal sense organ, but the main reason behind because the Charvak does not accept the mind and its existence. So man is not the accepted in Charvak philosophy. So there is only a 5 sense organ, and Charvak accept only a external sense organ. So this the empirical reality or the sense entity is that we can touch that marker, this board, or anything which can tangible, which we can touch by our hand and we can see by our eyes, we can hear by our ears. So we have a 5 sense organ. And now the transcendental entity, so which is beyond our sense or our experience, that are the transcendental entity, the God and liberation and heaven and hell, such kind of entities are transcendental entities. Now about the epistemology of Charvak philosophy. So here the subject starts. This was some basic points which we discussed. So before starting the chapter, we need to know about some basic concept. So now the epistemology. So we have a two part of this epistemology. First is the affirmative or the acceptable, and the second one is that the negative or the rejectable. In affirmative or the acceptable part, so perception is the only source of valid knowledge, and Charvak accept only perception, and another 5 source of valid knowledge, Charvak rejects those all. We have a 6 source of knowledge, 6 Brahmad in Indian philosophy. Charvak accept only one and rejects another 5. So perception is the only source of valid knowledge. And what is valid knowledge. So, Pramad, the source of knowledge. Perception is the only source of valid knowledge. And what is perception? What is perception? So, the contact of our sense to the object, and then we get knowledge, that is perception. The contact of our sensory organ to the object, and by this when we get knowledge, that is perception. And in the affirmative or the acceptable part, here is the realist or realism. So what is realism is that the object entity is the object existence is free and independent from the knower. This is the realism. So, by the epistemology, Charvak philosophy is realistic philosophy. And we have a five sense organ because Charvak accepts only five sense organs, so that is why there are explanation of five sense in the epistemology. And in negative part, so Charvak rejects the rejectable part, the inference and the word and the another source of knowledge. Charvak rejects everything except perception. Now, by his epistemology, Charvak walks ahead towards the Earth's metaphysics and towards he establishes ethics. By his epistemology, Charvak establishes metaphysics and his ethics. Now, we will see the metaphysics of Charvak philosophy. So here again we have a two part of this metaphysics. The first one is that the acceptable and the second one is rejectable. The affirmative and the negative. In the affirmative part, what Charvak is doing is that Charvak accept the existence of the world, and the reason behind is because we can see direct to this world, and the things which we cannot see by our eyes directly, Charvak does not accept the existence of those things, and inference and the words of Charvak rejects those things. So the world is made up by the four physical elements that are the earth, fire, water, and air. So these are one more than a one element. So that is why we know this philosophy, the pluralistic philosophy, pluralism, and the materialist philosophy also, because there is a more than one element. So that is why we call this materialist philosophy. Now, in the rejectable part of this metaphysics, so here Charvak reject the transcendental entity, the God and the soul and rebirth, pre-birth, and the concept of liberation and heaven and hell, such kind of transcendental entities which cannot be experienced directly by our sense organ. So Charvak rejects those things. And in another philosophy which accept this all the transcendental entities, they accept these things only by the inference or the word and another source of knowledge along with perception. But because of Charvak rejects everything, so Charvak accept only perceptions. So that is why Charvak rejects the transcendental entity. Now, we are Now we have seen that in epistemology, Charvak has accepted the perception and rejected the word and the inference. And in his metaphysics, he has accepted the world and its existence, and he has rejected the soul and the God. Now, by his epistemology, Charvak create his metaphysics and his ethics. Now we will see the ethics of Charvak. So in the ethics, this is the conclusion, the result of his metaphysics. So there also we have the two part, that is the affirmative and second was the negative. And the affirmative and the acceptance part, we have a four purusarth in Indian philosophy: dharma, artha and kama and moksha. So Charvak accept only two, that is the artha and kama, and he believes that the most important intention of the life is calm, the physical pleasure or the physical happiness, and the earth is the medium of achieving that target, that is calm, that is the physical pleasure. So according to ethics of Charvak philosophy, Charvak is believed the worldly and hedonistic and selfish and uh, um, worldly philosophy. So Charvak, the only who is involved achieving the physical pleasant. Um, Charvak believes that this is the supreme aim and the intention of the life, to achieve the physical pleasant. And in this world, we use the term ihlaukic, the worldly intention of this philosophy. And in the negative or the rejectable aspect of his ethics, he rejected liberation, rebirth, pre-birth, heaven, hell. Every time in his epistemology, in metaphysics, and in no, in his epistemology, he's rejecting the inference, a word and another source of knowledge. And in metaphysics and in ethics, he is rejecting the concept of a god, soul, and rebirth, pre-birth, and liberation. So by his epistemology, he establishes metaphysics and ethics. Okay, now what we have seen yet some keywords in the initial part, and the reason behind the term Charvak and the epistemology, metaphysics and ethics. Now we will see a little more explanation of his epistemology. So how the Charvak starts his epistemology, theory of the knowledge, or the Pramana Vichar, the idea of a source of knowledge. So according to epistemology, Charvak philosophy is perceptionist, realistic, worldly, in this world, the hedonistic, materialistic, atheist, and pluralistic philosophy. Now we see the definition of this word. So first word is the perceptionist. Perception, we have seen that the perception is the only source of valid knowledge. So this is, we can write in the introduction of the epistemology of Charvak philosophy, that perception is the only source of valid knowledge. Now the realistic, because the Charvak philosophy is the realistic philosophy. So what realism is, that the object entity and its existence is free and separate and independent from the knower or the subject. Object is free and independent from the subject or the knower. This is the realism, realistic. Now, the atheist. So there are two terms. First is atheist and anishwarvad. So atheist and the Nastic is that one who does not believe in the authenticity of the Vedas, that are atheist Nastic, and in Anishwarvadi philosophy, as Charvak is Anishwarvadi philosophy. So in Anishwarvad, it is the definition of this is that they do not believe the existence of the God. And the pluralistic philosophy is that the world is made by the physical element and more than one element, so that is there is a pluralism. And Charvak is a pluralistic philosophy, and the materialistic is that the world is made up by the material or the jad tattva, that is the earth, air, fire and water. And the ether, that is the akash, Charvak does not accept the existence of the akash because we cannot see directly and touch that. So the akash is rejectable in Charvak philosophy. The ether is rejectable in Charvak philosophy. Charvak does not accept that. Now, Charvak philosophy starts by his epistemology, and by his epistemology he establishes metaphysics and ethics. Charvak epistemology has two aspects. First is acceptable, second is rejectable or affirmative, and second is the negative. So in his acceptable part, in affirmative part, Charvak says that perception is the source of valid knowledge, and his rejectable part, Charvak rejects the inference and the word. Now we see the definition or the explanation of the term perception. What is perception? So we see the translation of perception, that is the pratyaksha in the language. So pratyaksha is the combination of a prati and aksha, which means in front of our eyes, the knowledge we get by our eyes, that is pratyaksha, that is perception. In front of our eyes, prati means samne, in front, and aksha means eyes. So the things which are in front of our eyes and we get the knowledge by that, that is perception. This is the word mean of pratyaksha or the perception. But there is one other metaphorical explanation, is that because Charvak believes the five external sensory organs, so by this five sense organ, whatever we get, we know the knowledge that are perception by eye, nose, ear, tongue and skin. These are five external sense organ. For the perception, for pratyaksha, what is the need? The necessity. So there is a need of sense organ, object and the contact. If there is object and sensory organ, our eyes are present, but the main thing is that there is no contact between the object and the eye, so the perception is not possible. So for the possibility of perception, for the actual perception, there should be contact between the eye and the object, and the knowledge we get by the contact of the eye and the object, that is the perception, that is pratyaksha. Now we see that why the perception is the only source of valid knowledge. So what Charvak give the explanation behind that? So there are five reasons or the explanation Charvak gave. First one is that the credibility. The perception is credible. The credibility. And the second one, there is no need for another one, because the object, we are looking the object directly, so there is no need to anyone else. looking to the object is sufficient for the source of knowledge. And the authenticity, in the perception we get the authenticity. And fourth one is unambiguous. So the term in Hindi we use bhrant rahit or nirbhrant, unambiguous. There's a no doubt, doubtless. And because of we are direct seeing, so direct, the sakshat is another specification of source of knowledge, the perception. So these are the specification of perception, the main features of perception. Why Charvak believes that perception is the only source of valid knowledge, and because above said specification, these are not found in the source of knowledge. That's why Charvak rejects those all the source of knowledge. And by rejecting those all source of knowledge, Charvak established this perception. And we have seen the characteristics of the perception. There are 5 characteristics of the perception. The creativity, there is no need of other one. The authenticity, and ambiguous or doubtless, and direct. So these are 5 specification of perception. Now the rejection of inference. So we will see this topic, the rejection. This is another important aspect from our exam, for our exam view. So we will see the rejection of inference in our next video. So thank you so much. Bye bye. We will be here again with our next part of this video. Thank you so much. Bye bye.